If I've counted right, this is day 18 of the 40 days of Lent. So we're not even halfway there yet, my friends. How's it going? Good? I'm so glad to hear that. I'm not doing so well myself. Whatever we have chosen to give up or to take on for Lent, there is always both an outward and an inward quality to it. Now, I'm sure you've all figured out that I'm a liberal, right? Yeah, hard to miss. No, I'm clergy. We're supposed to be liberal. We're supposed to be Democrats. Anyway, but I thought, I think for Lent I will give up political television. Yeah, it's not going well at all. I also thought I will maybe cut back on coffee. Coffee is starting to take up too much of my life. One entire section of the kitchen counter are all the different machines for making different kinds of coffee. I thought, that's getting a little idolatrous. But the point, even of the simple things, even say for children who give up M&Ms, not all chocolate, just M&Ms for Lent. The point of it is to bring forward in our consciousness how, as our collect says this morning, we have no power in ourselves to help ourselves. Even something very simple is going to be a struggle. And those struggles about the simple little surface things point us toward the deeper struggle to really let go of the lie that we tell ourselves that we can do it all by ourselves. We don't need a savior because we can figure this out on our own. We can do this on our own. The whole reading from Exodus, the first reading we heard this morning, God essentially giving an expanded version of the law to Moses. Every one of those, thou shalt not make false images, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife or cow or anything else that is thy neighbor's, no adultery, no jealousy, no murder. All of those things don't begin with outward actions. They begin with an inward movement of the heart, with an inner thought that has gone astray from the love of God. Thousands of years later, when Jesus is asked, what is the greatest law? He sums it all up by saying, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. And the second commandment, which is just like the first, love your neighbor as yourself. All of the law goes back to the root that is named love. And at the end of his earthly ministry, Jesus says to his disciples and through them to us, I'm giving you a new commandment. Love each other as I have loved you. So Lent is in part about reminding us both of God's love and our very human, very broken inability to totally trust in God's love and allow ourselves to be transformed by that love. I've shared this story with you, I think, once before about the day that before Ted and I were married, we were at a place called Echo Lake on Mount Desert Island. It's a long, narrow lake. At its narrowest point, it's about 1/4 mile across. And we were with his extended family. And someone had the great idea to swim across the lake to the other side. And so we all did that. We all swam over together and explored the shoreline. And then all of a sudden, after some time, Ted and I realized, the sun is starting to get toward twilight and everyone else has already gone back across the lake. And so we sat out swimming back across the lake. I had, in my own power, done just fine on the way over. But now about halfway back across the lake, my strength, my power, my determination to reach the other shore was starting to not be enough. I was in trouble, and I was in the middle of a lake, and the water was deep and dark and cold, and my mind started to go to that place of what it would be like if I just sank beneath the waves. Ted was ahead of me, and I rolled over on my back, and I called out to him. I said, "Ted, stay with me." And he came back, and I said, "Just stay with me." He didn't know I was in trouble, but he stayed. And his presence with me was enough that I was able to just float on my back and rest until I could go a little further. I remember I did the side stroke, because that's kind of the least energy for the most movement that you can get in the water. I did a few strokes at the side stroke, and then I had to roll over on my back again. I didn't tell him what was going on with me, but I needed him with me. And he stayed with me, and we made our way all the way back to shore. We need God, and we need to know that God will faithfully stay with us, because we're not strong enough in our own power to save ourselves. In Paul's letter this morning, he talks about the struggle that people in his time have, the struggle that people still in our own day have, to believe that the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ is what saves us. Paul says, the Jews demand a sign. Show us a sign to prove that this man who was crucified, who you say was raised from the dead, is the Messiah. If you have an image in your mind of what Messiah looks like, the reestablishment of a military, economic, physical kingdom and power and empire, Jesus doesn't look like that. And if you were at that time a Gentile, a Greek, a non-Jew, and certainly for the world in which we live, there's no logic to the idea of God becoming human and choosing to die a horrible death. Crucifixion was the most painful, shameful, excruciating way that you could die in the ancient world. It doesn't make logical sense. But that's the Savior we need. That's the God we need. Someone who chose not to stay at a distance on the far shore and wish us well for getting over, but someone who would come and be with us and stay with us and even give himself for us that we might live. Lent is not about how great we're doing with whatever we've given up or taken on. Lent is about reminding us over and over and over, oh, I'm doing it again, oh, I'm doing that thing again. It's about reminding us how much we need the God who loves us, the God who continues even here today to be with us, the God who saves us from ourselves. Thanks be to God. Amen.
Amen.